Good evening. And welcome to a quiet journey back in time, to the very beginnings of the towns that would one day become America. Tonight, we will slowly wander through the streets, forests, and rivers where the first settlers built their communities. One log, one path, one hopeful plan at a time. As you settle into your bed, allow your eyes to close gently. Let your shoulders soften. And let the soft sounds of history carry you into a calm, peaceful space. We will drift together through sleepy early streets, listen to the whispers of early settlers, and explore the slow, careful ways towns grew from empty land into communities. Quietly, gently, and with care, so, breathe in. Breathe out. And let us begin. Our story tonight: how early American towns were built. Long before the streets of Boston, Philadelphia, or Charleston were lined with buildings, and before the gentle hum of townsfolk filled the air, there was only quiet land. Rolling hills stretched into the distance, rivers curved lazily through forests, and the wind whispered softly through tall, old trees. It was here, in this wide, open, and sometimes wild space, that the first settlers in America began to imagine something new, a place to call home, a community where people could live together, safely and peacefully. Imagine, for a moment, walking through a thick forest, your feet crunching over fallen leaves. The morning mist drifts gently across the fields, and the smell of damp earth rises softly to meet you. There is a sense of stillness, a calm that hums like the quiet rhythm of your own breath. This is the land as it was, untouched, waiting. And in the midst of this silence, settlers arrived with careful steps, hopeful hearts, and quiet dreams of building something lasting. For many of these early settlers, the idea of a town was both practical and comforting. Life in the wilderness was beautiful, but it was also unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. Harsh winters, roaming wildlife, and long distances between neighbors made survival difficult. A town, they realized, could change all of that. It could be a place of safety, where neighbors watched over one another, and where shared resources made life gentler. Slowly, in whispers and plans, settlers began to imagine streets and homes, markets and meeting halls, a quiet rhythm of life growing from the soil itself. The first towns were not laid out with great speed or fancy design. Instead, they grew organically, like the trees around them, slowly taking shape over years. A small clearing might be chosen near a river, where water flowed gently and fish were plentiful. Here, the settlers would build the first homes, simple wooden cabins made from logs carefully cut and fitted together. Smoke from cooking fires would curl softly into the sky, and the scent of wood smoke would mix with the clean aroma of the nearby river. Life in these early settlements was not loud or bustling. It was steady, deliberate, and calm, filled with the quiet work of planting, building, and preparing for the seasons. Families worked together to construct homes, barns, and fences. Children played gently in the fields, their laughter mingling with the soft rustle of leaves. And every evening, after the sun dipped behind the trees, the settlers would gather around fires to share stories, to talk about their day, and to dream quietly about the town they were slowly building. One of the most important parts of building a town was choosing where to place the streets and homes. Settlers observed the land carefully. They looked for places where the soil was good for farming, where water was clean and flowing, and where the terrain would allow for future growth. Some towns grew in a simple grid pattern, with straight streets intersecting at right angles. Others followed the curves of rivers, hills, or valleys, winding gently like the landscape itself. Every decision was made slowly, thoughtfully, because these early settlers understood that the town they created would need to endure for generations. Community was at the heart of every town. Neighbors shared more than just space, they shared tools, labor, and knowledge. If a house needed repair, several families might come together, quietly and efficiently, to help. If a field needed plowing, hands worked side by side under the soft sun. And when the harvest came, there was always a gentle sense of celebration, a quiet acknowledgement of the land's gifts and the effort that had been put into tending it. Towns, at their earliest beginnings, were more than just homes, they were living, breathing networks of care and cooperation. Religion and faith also played a soft, guiding role in early towns. Small chapels or meeting houses were often among the first buildings constructed, simple structures where people could gather to reflect, to sing, and to find comfort in the quiet rhythm of shared worship. Bells might toll softly in the morning or evening, their gentle sound calling the community together. These sacred spaces were not only for spiritual life, they were places where settlers came together to discuss town matters, to plan, and to ensure that life remained peaceful and orderly. Trade and craft were quietly intertwined with everyday life. Blacksmiths would work near their forges, the soft glow of molten metal illuminating the calm evening air. Carpenters would measure and saw slowly, deliberately, shaping wood into everything from homes to simple tools. Farmers carried baskets of fresh vegetables or grains to market, their footsteps soft on the earth as they exchanged goods with neighbors. Even in these practical tasks, there was a rhythm, a gentle flow that made life feel complete and satisfying. The natural world itself became part of the town's design. Trees were left standing to provide shade. Rivers were carefully crossed with simple wooden bridges, and paths meandered alongside gentle streams. Settlers watched the movement of animals, the changing seasons, and the rise and fall of the sun, allowing the land to guide their choices. In this way, the town was not imposed on the landscape, it grew with it, quietly, like a seed pushing through the soil, finding its own space in the gentle embrace of the natural world. Even the names of early towns carried a sense of calm hope. Some were named after distant places settlers remembered from home, gentle reminders of life left behind. Others reflected the land itself, quiet rivers, soft hills, or fertile valleys. Every name was a small story, a whisper of identity that rooted the community and gave it character. In this way, even before the first brick was laid or the first fence post driven, the town already had a presence, a quiet personality that would guide its future, and so, in these first quiet years, a new kind of life began to unfold. It was slow, deliberate, and steady, a gentle weaving of human care into the soft fabric of the land. Families planted seeds, carved homes from timber, and walked the narrow paths that would one day become streets. Communities formed through shared labor and quiet cooperation. Towns were more than the sum of their buildings, they were a rhythm, a flow, and a heartbeat, steadily growing with the people who nurtured them. As night fell over these early settlements, the glow of fires would shimmer softly against the darkened sky. The wind rustled the leaves, the river whispered against the banks, and the settlers rested quietly in their homes. Tomorrow would bring more work, more careful decisions, more small steps toward building a lasting town. But for now, there was calm. A sense of peace hung in the air, the kind that comes from knowing that something important is being made. Slowly, carefully, and with love, and so, the first chapter of early American towns quietly unfolded, one log, one path, one gentle dream at a time. The settlers had planted not just buildings, but the beginning of communities. shaping the land and leaving a legacy that would echo softly for generations to come. In the quiet mornings of early American settlements, the first rays of sunlight would stretch softly across the landscape. Mist hovered above the ground, settling in gentle folds across the hills and valleys. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of earth, pine, and wildflowers. In these early hours, the settlers began their work for the day, moving carefully and deliberately, their hands shaping the land as patiently as a sculptor shaping clay. Before a town could truly exist, the land itself had to be prepared. Forests that had stood for hundreds of years were dense and full of life. Birds sang softly from the trees, small animals rustled in the undergrowth, and the wind whispered through branches that swayed gently like a lullaby. To build a town, settlers first had to clear the land, removing trees, underbrush, and stones, while being careful to preserve the natural balance that allowed crops to grow and rivers to flow freely. Axes and saws were their quiet companions. The soft thud of a chopping axe, the gentle scrape of a saw cutting through a log, and the occasional ringing of a hammer were sounds that blended with the wind and water, forming a slow, steady rhythm. It was not rushed work. Every tree was considered, every space measured, and every log carefully chosen. Some were used for homes, others for fences, and still others for firewood to keep warm during long winters. Settlers cleared small plots first, leaving the land around rivers, streams, and meadows mostly untouched. These spaces were vital for food, water, and movement. A town had to breathe with the land, not fight against it. Paths were made along gentle slopes, winding naturally rather than cutting sharply through hills. The settlers understood that harmony with nature would ensure the survival and comfort of the town for years to come. Once a plot was cleared, it was time to prepare the foundation for buildings. Foundations were quiet, simple, yet essential. Settlers dug shallow trenches for log cabins or framed spaces for timber houses. Stones were gathered from nearby fields or riverbeds, chosen carefully for size and shape. Each stone and log was placed deliberately, sometimes with soft, whispered instructions passed among neighbors. The work was slow, steady, and precise, almost meditative in its rhythm. For homes, logs were often notched and fitted together by hand, a delicate process requiring patience and attention. The settlers would measure twice, cut once, and slowly lift each log into place. The smell of fresh cut wood mingled with the earthy scent of soil and leaves, creating a quiet, grounding atmosphere. Families often worked together on these structures, their hands busy, their voices low and calm, exchanging gentle words of encouragement. Fences and enclosures were equally important. They defined the boundaries of personal space, kept livestock safe, and marked the edges of gardens and fields. A fence might stretch slowly along the edge of a plot, its construction a simple, repetitive rhythm that seemed to mirror the heartbeat of the land. Each post was sunk carefully into the earth, each rail fitted snugly. By the time a fence was complete, it was more than a boundary, it was a quiet symbol of care and stewardship. Paths and roads began as narrow trails, winding gently through the cleared spaces. These trails connected homes, meeting houses, and market areas, creating the beginnings of a town's layout. Settlers would walk these paths daily, their steps soft on the earth, their presence marking the land without disturbing it too harshly. Over time, these paths became wider, stronger, and more permanent, but in the earliest days, they were subtle, gentle traces of human life upon the natural landscape. Water was central to every town. Streams and rivers were carefully observed, their flow measured and respected. Some towns were built along banks where water could be drawn easily for drinking, cooking, and washing. Small dams or channels might be constructed slowly to guide water where it was needed, but always gently, without forcing the river too harshly into unnatural shapes. Wells were dug patiently, often by hand, providing a steady source of life-giving water. The quiet sound of water flowing became part of the town's rhythm. A soft, soothing presence for the settlers as they went about their daily work. Fields for growing food were another essential foundation. Settlers cleared small sections of forest, leaving rich soil intact, and planted crops that would sustain the community. Corn, beans, squash, and later potatoes were sown carefully, each seed pressed gently into the earth. Gardens were tended with soft hands, and weeds removed slowly, quietly, so as not to disturb the soil too much. Even the act of planting became a gentle meditation, a quiet conversation between humans and the land. The first public buildings were also laid carefully. Small meeting houses, simple structures of wood or stone, provided space for gatherings, worship, and town decisions. These buildings were often placed near the center of the clearing, close to paths and water, so that everyone could reach them easily. They were modest, quiet, and functional, designed not to dominate the landscape, but to serve the community with unobtrusive grace. Blacksmiths and craftsmen were among the first to follow the settlers. Their workspaces, often simple sheds or open areas, became centers of quiet productivity. The occasional clang of metal on metal, or the soft scrape of tools shaping wood, punctuated the calm daily rhythm. These sounds, steady and deliberate, became part of the town's gentle heartbeat, reminding settlers that life, though quiet, was purposeful and productive. Even as the land was cleared and buildings rose, settlers remained aware of the delicate balance with nature. Trees were left standing along riverbanks for shade and soil protection. Small groves provided fruit and nuts. Meadows and wildflowers were allowed to grow near homes, creating a soft, natural buffer around the settlement. Birds and animals continued to visit, their presence a quiet reminder that the town existed within a larger, living world. As the day drew to a close, settlers would pause, often standing silently to watch the sun dip behind the hills. Smoke from fireplaces rose gently, curling into the evening sky. Animals returned to their pens. Children were called indoors, and a hush settled over the land. There was satisfaction in the work completed, a soft, calming contentment in seeing the first structure standing firmly on foundations built with care and patience. In these early days, clearing the land and building foundations was more than physical work, it was an act of quiet hope. Each log placed, each stone set, each seed planted, carried the promise of a town that would one day thrive. Settlers moved with a rhythm that was deliberate, calm, and enduring, understanding that a town's strength was born not only from walls and fences but from thoughtful, patient care. And so, under the soft glow of dusk, with the land cleared gently and foundations laid carefully, the first true signs of a town began to emerge. Paths curved softly, homes rose slowly, fences marked quiet boundaries, and fields promised future harvests. It was a time of slow, deliberate creation, a calm, gentle building of something that would endure for generations. The settlers' quiet hands and patient hearts had begun the work of turning wild, empty land into a community, one soft step, one careful act at a time. As the cleared land settled beneath the soft morning light, the first settlers began to think not just about individual homes or fields, but about the town as a whole. How would the streets run? Where would the meeting houses be? Where could a market safely flourish? The process of laying out streets and organizing life was gentle, deliberate, and thoughtful, a quiet planning that took both the landscape and the people into careful consideration. Imagine standing in a soft meadow, the mist slowly lifting as sunlight warms your face. You see the silhouettes of simple homes rising quietly above the land, smoke curling from chimneys, and small fences defining gardens and fields. In between these early structures, there is now room to imagine the town's layout. The settlers walked slowly across the earth, measuring distances, observing the direction of the sun, and noting where water flowed. Every step, every observation, carried a quiet weight. The streets were not rushed into existence, they were allowed to grow in harmony with the natural rhythms of the land. The most common approach to town layout in early America was simple, practical, and easy to remember. Settlers often used a grid pattern, drawing straight streets at right angles to each other. This method made it easy to divide land into lots for homes and gardens, and to create clear boundaries for public spaces. Yet even within a grid, there was room for nature's influence. Streets might curve gently around a large tree or follow the natural slope of a hill. Waterways were respected, so that bridges or crossings could be built in the gentlest locations possible. Main streets were often the first to be imagined, wide enough to accommodate carts, horses, and pedestrians. Along these streets, small squares or open spaces were left for markets, gatherings, or future buildings. These open areas became the quiet heart of the town, places where settlers could meet and share news, goods, or simply a gentle conversation. In the evenings, the soft murmur of voices and the rustling of leaves created a rhythm that felt calm and natural. Side streets and smaller lanes were laid out afterward, winding gently between homes, gardens, and fields. They were often narrow and lined with fences or hedges, creating cozy, protected paths. Children would walk these lanes quietly, playing games that left soft footprints on the earth. Livestock might wander slowly along designated paths, guided gently by their caretakers. In all of this, the town began to take shape not just as a collection of buildings, but as a living, breathing network of people, animals, and nature moving together in calm harmony. Organization extended beyond streets into the placement of buildings and public spaces. Meeting houses or chapels were often at the center of town, easily reachable by every resident. Schools, though small and simple, were placed nearby to allow children to learn within a gentle, familiar rhythm of daily life. Markets were positioned near water or open spaces so that trading could flow easily, quietly, without confusion. Even the location of wells and communal water sources was carefully chosen, often at the edge of streets or in small courtyards, so that everyone could draw water without straying too far from home. Each lot in the early town had its own quiet purpose. Homes might be close together, offering warmth, protection, and companionship. Gardens and fields were carefully placed nearby, so that families could tend their crops without straying too far. Workshops for blacksmiths, carpenters, and weavers were located along streets where their soft work could be heard but would not disturb homes. In this way, the town became a gently coordinated system, with every element contributing to the steady flow of life. Settlers often worked together to mark the boundaries of streets and lots. Simple wooden stakes, stones, or lines in the dirt defined spaces clearly. Decisions were made quietly, sometimes through discussion around a fire, sometimes by observing the land and agreeing naturally where a street or lot should go. There was patience in every choice, a recognition that the layout of the town would affect generations to come. It was a calm kind of foresight. As if each step was part of a soft conversation with the future, even the naming of streets was done with care. Some streets were named for trees that lined them gently, like Oak Street or Elm Lane. Others honored quiet virtues, such as Hope Street or Harmony Lane, reflecting the ideals settlers held for their new community. Main thoroughfares might be named after local rivers or hills, reminding the town of the natural world that surrounded it. Each name was a whisper of intention, a soft thread weaving people and place together in memory and purpose. While the streets and lots were taking shape, the settlers were also thinking about the quiet rules and routines that would guide life in the town. Town meetings were held slowly and deliberately, often in the evenings or on Sundays, allowing time for reflection. Decisions about shared responsibilities, like maintaining paths, bridges, or communal fields, were made gently, with discussion and agreement rather than haste or argument. In this way, the organization of life became as calm and orderly as the layout of the streets themselves. Paths were not just physical routes, they were social ones, connecting people and ideas. Children would walk to neighbors' homes, carrying small gifts or helping with chores. Farmers would move along paths with baskets of produce, trading quietly at the market square. Women and men exchanged soft greetings. Shared news, and lent assistance where needed. The streets, though simple and sometimes uneven, became arteries of gentle human connection, a rhythm of life that was both practical and soothing. Animals were also carefully integrated into town life. Horses, cows, sheep, and chickens moved along designated paths or pastures. Settlers observed their patterns, allowing livestock enough space to graze without interfering with homes or gardens. Dogs and cats roamed quietly, keeping watch over both people and property. Even the smallest details, the location of a stable or pen, were considered carefully, as if the town itself was a gentle ecosystem where every living being had its place. In the earliest towns, fences and hedges further defined spaces, guiding both human and animal movement. They provided subtle boundaries, marking the difference between public streets, private gardens, and communal areas. The work of building fences was quiet and steady, with neighbors often helping one another. Every post driven into the earth, every rail secured, was an act of cooperation, patience, and care. Slowly, the town gained a sense of structure, not forced or harsh, but soft, flowing, and natural, as the sun sank low in the sky, casting a golden glow across the streets. Settlers would pause to admire the slow growth of their town. Dust from the paths rose gently in the fading light, mingling with the scent of smoke from chimneys and the soft aroma of evening flowers. Horses lowered their heads to graze, children ran softly along lanes, and the quiet murmur of conversation drifted like a gentle lullaby through the town. In these early moments, the town was more than just buildings and streets. It was a living, breathing rhythm of people, nature, and quiet life. By nightfall, the streets lay peaceful and still, lined with the shadows of newly built homes and fences. The faint sounds of water from streams or wells reached ears like a soft song. Residents settled into their homes, and the town rested as it had during every quiet evening before. Tomorrow would bring more work. More careful planning, more gentle steps in the creation of a thriving community. But for now, there was calm. The streets, though simple, were full of promise, guiding the lives of those who would walk them slowly, peacefully, and with purpose. In the careful layout of streets and the quiet organization of life, early American towns began to take on a character all their own. They were places where the land and people worked in harmony, where every step, every post, and every path contributed to a steady, peaceful rhythm. And in this rhythm, the settlers discovered a deep sense of satisfaction, a soft contentment in knowing that the town was slowly becoming a home, a gentle, enduring space for generations to come. With the streets gently laid out and the foundations carefully prepared, the settlers turned their attention to the most intimate and personal spaces of their towns, their homes. A home, in the earliest days, was more than just walls and a roof. It was warmth, safety, and the quiet promise of comfort after long, laborious days in the sun and wind. Building a home required patience, careful planning, and a gentle rhythm, just like the land itself. Imagine walking through the clearing of a new settlement in the early morning, the mist lifting slowly from the fields. You hear the soft scrape of a saw, the muffled thud of an axe, and the low murmur of people working together. Children's laughter drifts gently from the edge of the forest as they play, their small feet softly brushing the ground. The settlers moved deliberately, lifting logs, measuring beams, and fitting pieces together with quiet hands, their movements as calm and steady as the flow of a nearby stream. The first homes were usually simple, built from logs cut from nearby forests. Each tree was chosen carefully, ensuring that it was strong, straight, and suitable for construction. Axes and hand saws became extensions of the settlers' hands, guiding wood into notches and grooves, fitting each piece snugly against the next. There was no rush, every log was placed with attention, every joint checked and reinforced. The process was repetitive but soothing, a quiet rhythm that blended with the sounds of the surrounding wilderness. Inside the homes, settlers built hearths, the heart of each household. The hearth was a central place where warmth, light, and nourishment came together. Flames flickered softly against the walls, casting gentle shadows that danced across the floor. Pots simmered quietly, filling the air with the earthy aroma of stews, grains, and herbs. Families would gather around the hearth at the end of the day, speaking in low voices, sharing meals, and listening to the wind whisper through the trees outside. Here, in this small space, the home became more than a shelter, it became a haven. Roofs were carefully constructed to protect from rain, snow, and wind. Simple wooden shingles or thatched coverings were laid in overlapping layers, designed to guide water gently to the ground. Settlers worked slowly on rooftops, securing each piece with steady hands. Rain tapping on the roof would become a comforting rhythm, a gentle song that accompanied evenings spent in the warmth of the home. Windows and doors were placed thoughtfully, both for practicality and comfort. Small windows allowed light to enter during the day, and gentle ventilation helped keep the home fresh. Doors were built strong enough to protect from the elements and the occasional wandering animal, but light enough to be opened easily, inviting neighbors to stop by for quiet conversation or shared labor. Every choice in constructing a home was deliberate. A soft balance between strength, functionality, and comfort. Inside, settlers worked to make the space as livable as possible. Simple wooden tables, benches, and shelves were crafted by hand. These pieces of furniture were practical, yet carried a quiet beauty, the grain of the wood, the smoothness of worn edges, and the gentle curves of handcrafted surfaces all adding to the peaceful atmosphere of the home. Beds were often simple wooden frames with straw or feather mattresses, covered with handmade quilts that offered both warmth and a sense of familiarity. Lighting in early homes was soft and minimal. Candles and oil lamps cast a warm glow, filling rooms with gentle, flickering illumination. Shadows shifted slowly across walls, creating a serene environment that invited calm and reflection. Evenings were quiet, a time for family stories, gentle music, or the soothing work of mending clothes and preparing for the next day. In these moments, the home became a sanctuary, a place where the worries of the outside world melted away. Gardens and small plots near the home were tended with care, providing fresh vegetables, herbs, and sometimes fruit. Settlers moved slowly through these spaces, pulling weeds, watering plants, and checking the soil. The act of caring for the land immediately surrounding the home mirrored the care taken in constructing the house itself. Both required patience, attention, and a gentle touch. Each sprout that grew and each flower that bloomed added to the quiet comfort of life in the settlement. Homes were not built in isolation. Neighbors worked together, lending hands and advice. A new chimney might require extra help, lifting heavy logs was often a communal task. Through this shared labor, bonds were quietly formed. Families exchanged tips, shared food, and offered encouragement. The building of homes was a social activity, yet it remained gentle, never rushed, and always attentive to the needs and rhythms of the land and people. Even the smallest details were considered. Hearthstones were chosen for their flat surfaces and smooth texture, allowing for safe cooking and warmth. Doors were fitted so they closed quietly, keeping the gentle peace of the home intact. The placement of furniture and sleeping areas was deliberate, often following the natural flow of light from windows or the warmth radiating from the hearth. Settlers understood that a home, carefully arranged, contributed to both physical comfort and a sense of calm, essential for a life that was often challenging and slow-moving. Families decorated their homes subtly, often with items made from the natural world. Dried herbs might hang from beams, flowers might rest in small containers, and simple woven mats softened the floors. These touches were never extravagant, they were quiet reminders of the beauty and bounty of the land. Every object, every placement, was chosen to contribute to an atmosphere of peace, reflection, and gentle comfort. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, homes glowed softly in the golden light. Smoke rose gently from chimneys, curling into the evening sky. Families gathered around the hearth, sharing quiet meals and stories, while the wind hummed softly through trees and along paths. Settlers listened to the distant sounds of rivers, the soft call of birds, and the gentle rustle of leaves, feeling comforted by the harmony between their homes and the natural world. Night brought a profound stillness. The soft, rhythmic sounds of the countryside blended with the warmth of the hearth. And the quiet presence of loved ones offered comfort against the cool air. Settlers drifted into sleep surrounded by the spaces they had built with careful hands, mindful thought, and patient hearts. Each home was a small sanctuary, a gentle pause in the rhythm of life, a quiet testament to human care and resilience. Over time, the homes formed clusters, creating neighborhoods, streets, and a sense of community. What had begun as individual shelters now became a connected tapestry of warmth, safety, and human presence. Paths led from one door to the next, fences marked gentle boundaries, and gardens and fields wove life into the spaces between homes. The town, slowly but surely, was becoming a living organism, held together by the quiet work of building shelter and nurturing comfort. And so, in the gentle unfolding of these first days, homes and hearths were more than structures. They were the quiet beginnings of life itself, a rhythm of work, care, and calm that shaped the people who lived there and the town they were creating. With each log placed, each hearth built, each garden tended, the settlers wove comfort, safety, and warmth into the very fabric of their new world. The town was no longer just land cleared or streets laid, it was becoming a home, a gentle place for hearts to rest and minds to dream. With homes settled gently along winding streets and the soft glow of hearths warming each household, early American towns began to hum with a quiet, gentle rhythm of life. Though the days were long and filled with labor, there was also purpose and satisfaction in the slow unfolding of daily routines. Among the most vital elements of early towns were the places where people worked and traded, markets, workshops, and communal spaces where life quietly intertwined. Imagine walking through a newly cleared street, the early morning mist softening the edges of homes and fences. Birds call softly from the trees, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of fresh earth and growing gardens. In the center of the settlement, small wooden stalls begin to rise, forming a modest marketplace. Farmers lay baskets of corn, beans, squash, and other produce upon rough-hewn tables, their hands steady and deliberate. There is no hurry, only the quiet rhythm of preparation, the soft murmur of conversation, and the slow, calming cadence of life in motion. Workshops began to appear nearby, small buildings made of logs or timber, each with a distinct purpose. The blacksmith's forge was often one of the first, a place of gentle heat and focused labor. Sparks flew softly as metal was shaped, cooled, and hammered into tools, nails, and horseshoes. The sound was steady and rhythmic, a comforting presence that spoke of quiet skill and productivity. Settlers paused occasionally to watch, fascinated by the interplay of fire, metal, and patient hands. Carpenters and coopers worked in adjoining spaces, their saws and planes cutting and shaping wood into furniture, barrels, and household implements. The soft scrape of tools, the gentle tapping of mallets, and the faint scent of freshly cut timber filled the air. Each craft was meticulous, requiring careful attention and slow, deliberate effort. Children sometimes watched quietly, absorbing the motions and sounds, while parents lent a helping hand or offered guidance. In these workshops, skill, patience, and cooperation created the quiet backbone of the community. Markets were both practical and social. Residents came not just to exchange goods, but to share news, offer help, and maintain the gentle bonds of the town. There was a quiet etiquette to these interactions. Greetings were soft, movements deliberate, and transactions calm and orderly. Farmers traded produce for tools, women exchanged handmade textiles, and craftsmen sold items created with careful labor. The exchange of goods was a subtle rhythm, a whisper of human connection woven into the soft daily life of the settlement. Even in these early days, the concept of shared resources was important. Communal spaces were often designated for larger projects, like repairing wagons, building fences, or collecting firewood. People moved together in slow, coordinated effort, each action measured and precise. There was no rush, only the gentle flow of work accomplished through cooperation. Through these shared tasks, townspeople nurtured quiet bonds, learning to trust one another and to support each other in ways both practical and comforting. Education and learning also quietly took shape within these early towns. Small schools, often simple structures with a single room, were built near homes or the central meeting house. Children gathered to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, their voices soft as they practiced letters and numbers. Teachers moved deliberately through lessons, speaking gently, guiding hands and minds with patience. The rhythm of school days mirrored the calm pace of town life, structured yet gentle, purposeful yet quiet. Religion, too, remained a guiding, tranquil force. Meeting houses or chapels, often modest but sturdy, were centers of faith and community life. Bells tolled softly, calling settlers together for worship, reflection, or town meetings. Inside, sunlight filtered through small windows, illuminating wooden pews and the simple pulpit where prayers and sermons were shared in calm, measured tones. These spaces became anchors, grounding the community and reinforcing the slow, steady rhythms of early town life. The work of maintaining the town was as deliberate as its construction. Streets were repaired gradually, often by families working together on soft summer mornings. Bridges over streams were reinforced with gentle hands, stones and timbers placed with care. Wells were dug slowly, and water channels maintained thoughtfully, ensuring the town's quiet flow of life remained unbroken. Every task, from the smallest chore to the larger project, was a meditation in patience and cooperation. Markets, workshops, and communal spaces also became places of gentle creativity. Basket weaving, candle making, and sewing were not just practical skills, they were soothing practices that produced objects both useful and quietly beautiful. The rhythmic motions of hands weaving reeds or stitching cloth created a gentle sense of peace. Even in labor, settlers found moments of reflection and satisfaction, their work contributing to the town's slow heartbeat. In these early towns, food preparation and preservation were also quiet acts of care. Families worked together to smoke or salt meats, dry fruits and vegetables, and bake bread in slow, measured routines. Kitchens smelled of grains, herbs, and the soft warmth of fires, filling homes and nearby streets with comfort. Meals were shared in calm gatherings, reinforcing bonds between families and neighbors. The simple act of eating together became a gentle celebration of community, a quiet acknowledgement of shared effort and care. Time itself seemed to move differently in these small towns. Days unfolded in soft, repeating cycles of work, rest, and social connection. Dawn brought the quiet stirring of activity, soft calls to chores and tasks, and gentle walks along dirt paths. Noon offered a calm pause, when the sun was high and work slowed to a measured pace. Evening descended slowly, bringing with it the warm glow of hearths, the soft clinking of utensils, and the gentle hum of conversation. Nightfall ushered in a tranquil hush, with only the distant rustle of leaves, the soft murmur of water, and the occasional call of a night bird reminding settlers that the world continued, quietly, around them. Animals, too, had a subtle presence in this rhythm. Horses and oxen pulled carts slowly along streets, their steps careful on the soft earth. Chickens clucked quietly in coops, and cows grazed calmly in nearby fields. Dogs wandered softly along lanes, keeping watch and offering companionship. Even the movement of animals contributed to the town's gentle pulse, reminding settlers of the harmony possible when humans and nature coexisted with care. As the seasons changed, markets and workshops adapted smoothly to the rhythm of the year. In spring, planting and gardening took precedence, with children and adults alike moving softly through fields and paths. Summer brought a gentle buzz of activity, with harvesting, trading, and crafting taking center stage. Autumn was a time of preparation, slowing down the pace and organizing for the coming cold. Winter, though harsh, offered a quiet pause. Fires burned brightly in homes, workshops worked at a calmer pace, and the soft snowfall muffled the sound of life outside, creating a serene, peaceful world. Even leisure had its place in early towns, though it was often gentle and reflective. Settlers told stories by the fireside, sharing history, family tales, or quiet imaginings of the future. Children played simple games in the soft light of morning or evening, their laughter blending with the calm of the town. Music, when it was shared, was soft and melodic, filling homes and meeting spaces with gentle harmony. Every quiet act of community, every deliberate movement, every shared moment, contributed to the town's slow, comforting rhythm. In the midst of all this quiet work, settlers began to understand the true meaning of community. A town was not simply a collection of houses, streets, and workshops. It was a living, breathing organism sustained by patience, care, and gentle cooperation. Every interaction, every task, and every shared moment reinforced a soft network of connection, trust, and mutual respect. The town's quiet pulse reflected the rhythm of its people, and in turn, the people found calm, reassurance, and satisfaction in that shared heartbeat. By the end of each day, as shadows lengthened and fires glowed softly through windows, settlers would pause to appreciate their work. Markets, workshops, and homes all spoke of quiet perseverance, careful planning, and gentle collaboration. Paths and fences, gardens and hearths, tools and baskets, each contributed to the calm, steady life of the town. And in this peaceful rhythm, settlers found a profound sense of belonging, a quiet comfort in knowing that they were part of something larger than themselves, a living community, patiently, gently growing together. Beyond the homes, workshops, and winding streets of early American towns, there stretched the open fields and gentle farms that sustained the community. These spaces were the quiet heart of survival and comfort, where families worked in rhythm with the land, planting, tending, and harvesting crops that would nourish them through the changing seasons. Life in these fields was deliberate, steady, and meditative, a slow dance between human care and nature's guidance. Imagine walking through a sunlit meadow in early spring. The soft scent of damp earth rises from the soil, mingling with the faint aroma of budding flowers. Mist drifts lazily among the trees, curling like whispers along the ground. Settlers move carefully through their fields, hands brushing against the soil as they plant seeds. Corn kernels are pressed gently into prepared furrows, beans nestled softly alongside, and squash seeds placed at measured intervals. Every movement is slow, precise, and intentional, a quiet conversation between people and the land. The rhythm of farm work was tied closely to the seasons. Spring brought preparation and planting. Settlers cleared small plots of land, removed stones and fallen branches, and tilled the soil, all with quiet determination. The gentle sound of hoes striking earth and hands patting soil into rows was a subtle, soothing rhythm. Children helped by carrying water, gathering small stones, or planting seeds beside their parents, learning the quiet arts of patience and care. As the sun rose higher in the sky, settlers took pauses beneath the soft shade of trees, resting and observing their work. Birds flitted among the branches, their songs a gentle accompaniment to the slow labor of hands and feet. The sight of sprouting seeds, pushed gently above the soil by quiet persistence, brought reassurance. The rhythm of farming, though physically demanding, carried a sense of calm and predictability, a soft, comforting order in a world that could sometimes feel wild and unpredictable. Summer brought warmth, growth, and a gentle bustle of activity. Crops matured slowly, nourished by sun and rain, and the settlers moved softly among the rows, weeding, watering, and tending to the land. The hum of insects and the soft rustle of leaves became part of the background music of daily life. Cows grazed quietly in the pastures, sheep moved gently along fences, and chickens wandered softly near the edges of fields. Settlers worked side by side, their actions coordinated and calm, a silent symphony of life and labor. Fields were carefully organized to ensure balance and sustainability. Crop rotation was practiced, allowing the soil to rest and regain nutrients. Gardens for vegetables and herbs were located near homes, while larger plots for grain stretched farther into open land. Orchards and groves of fruit trees were planted with foresight, their gentle growth adding beauty, shade, and nourishment over time. Even the spacing of plants reflected careful observation of sunlight, water flow, and soil quality, creating a rhythm that was both practical and soothing. Harvest time was a season of gentle activity and quiet satisfaction. Crops were gathered slowly, by hand or with simple tools, and brought to storage areas or communal barns. Corn was husked with deliberate care, beans were strung and dried, and squash and pumpkins were carried carefully to safe, cool spaces. The air was filled with a soft, earthy scent, mingled with the subtle warmth of sun-baked soil. Families worked together, often in near silence, focused on the rhythmic tasks at hand. Even the occasional laugh or whispered conversation blended harmoniously with the soft sounds of the fields. Food preservation was equally deliberate and careful. Smokehouses, root cellars, and storage sheds were constructed to hold the bounty of harvest, ensuring the community could withstand the quiet months of winter. Meats were cured or smoked, vegetables dried or packed in cool, shaded areas, and grain stored safely in bins or barrels. Every step of preservation was done with patient hands, careful attention, and a quiet mindfulness of the importance of sustaining life through the seasons. Livestock were tended with the same calm attentiveness. Horses and oxen were used to plow fields or carry goods, their movements slow and deliberate, matched to the rhythm of human work. Chickens, ducks, cows, and sheep were cared for carefully, fed and guided gently, and protected by fences that were built and maintained with patient hands. Even the soft calls and whistles used to guide animals were part of the gentle chorus of the town, adding to the sense of quiet harmony between settlers and the natural world. Farming also created opportunities for connection. Neighbors exchanged seeds, offered help during planting or harvest, and shared knowledge of soil, weather, and growing techniques. These exchanges were calm, cooperative, and quietly reassuring, building trust and friendship. Children learn not only the technical skills of planting and harvesting but also the soft lessons of patience, observation, and respect for the land. Farming was education in rhythm, resilience, and gentle teamwork. Water played a constant role in the life of the fields. Streams and rivers were observed carefully, with channels and small irrigation systems constructed to guide water to crops. Wells were dug to ensure homes and gardens had fresh water. Even small rains were welcomed with gratitude, the soft patter of drops on leaves and soil offering a calming melody. Water was never taken for granted. It moved quietly through fields, providing nourishment and sustaining life with steady consistency. The changing seasons also guided the settlers' pace and work. Spring was a time of planting and preparation, summer of growth and tending, autumn of harvest and preservation, and winter of rest and reflection. During colder months, work slowed to a gentle rhythm. Snow covered the fields in a soft blanket, and the quiet of winter offered settlers a pause. Fires warmed homes, families shared meals, and plans for the coming spring were made slowly, carefully, and thoughtfully. Even in stillness, the land and its people were connected by a steady, calming rhythm. Farms and fields were more than sources of food, they were spaces of reflection and connection. Walking slowly among rows of growing crops, observing the gentle sway of plants in the breeze, and listening to the soft chorus of birds and insects provided settlers with a profound sense of calm. Labor became meditation, the repetition of planting, watering, and harvesting offering a steady, soothing rhythm. The land responded with quiet generosity, rewarding care, patience, and attention with nourishment and beauty, even in moments of challenge, when storms threatened, pests wandered, or harvests were modest, the settlers found solace in their work. They adapted gently, repairing fences, replanting where needed, and relying on the support of neighbors. Life in early towns was never without difficulty. But the slow, mindful engagement with land and community provided a comforting structure, a sense of quiet order amid the unpredictability of the world. As the sun sank low over fields and meadows, the settlers would often pause to admire the fruits of their work. Corn stalks swayed softly in the evening breeze, flowers leaned gently toward the fading light, and animals returned quietly to pens and pastures. Smoke from hearths curled into the sky, mingling with the scents of soil, wood, and vegetation. Children played softly along paths between homes and gardens, their laughter mingling with the calm hum of life. The fields were no longer simply land, they were living spaces, carefully tended and filled with the quiet heartbeat of human effort. And so, through the gentle rhythm of farms and fields, early American towns grew not only in size but in resilience and comfort. Life moved slowly, deliberately, and in harmony with the land. Every seed planted, every fence repaired, every animal tended, contributed to a steady pulse of sustenance and calm. Settlers learned to live with patience, to observe carefully, and to find satisfaction in quiet labor. The town was no longer just a collection of homes and streets, it was a living community, nourished by the soft, enduring work of those who walked its fields and gardens, day by day, season by season. As homes, markets, workshops, and fields settled quietly into the landscape, settlers began to think beyond the borders of their own town. Early American towns were not islands, they were part of a broader network of communities, rivers, forests, and open land. Roads and waterways became vital, gentle lifelines, linking neighbors, towns, and settlements. These paths and channels carried goods, people, ideas, and the quiet rhythm of daily life. Imagine the morning sun rising softly over a river that curves lazily through the countryside. Mist lingers above the water, softening the edges of trees and fields. Settlers pause to observe the flow, noting where the current is gentle, where the banks are high, and where boats or rafts might move safely. Rivers were more than sources of water, they were highways of the past, carrying produce, timber, and travelers quietly along their winding paths. Waterways shaped the settlement itself.